Not bad, not bad.
We wanted to bring DJ in to talk about the situation with the OUA uniforms, I'll say.
Yeah.
He was nice enough to come inside the studio. But before we do that, real quick, I want one thought from you on the Oscars.
Wow.
And I think I might know what it is because I was on Twitter last night too, and I saw how unreal Common and John Legend were, so that might be the one for you. But aside from that...
Yeah, one thought. Other than them, what is my one? There were so many.
Did you think the speeches were good last night?
I thought the speeches were good. I thought it was the Oscars of causes, whether it was ALS or equal pay for women, or what's going on in the United States and places like Ferguson. And obviously, the fact that a movie like Selma is very much mirrors what's happening right now. So I thought it was the Oscar of causes. A bland show, but the speeches were great. And I love the speeches of the nervous guys who aren't normally in front of the camera and don't really know what to say. So I really enjoyed it.
The guy that won for Big Hero 6 is actually from Kitchener-Waterloo. Grew up there, which I didn't know until this morning. The athletic director from Laurier, Peter Baxter, actually retweeted that this morning.
Okay, cool.
So I thought that was kind of cool. Nice little local touch. But Scott, you're really cool with Donovan's in studio, and we have some things to discuss. So we'll see you later. Scram.
Okay, see you, bye.
See you later, buddy. Scott Hasty from The Silhouette talking about the OUA basketball matchups that are set in the playoffs. It's going to be entertaining moving forward. Look forward to watching them. Sorry we rushed you in, DJ.
No worries. I apologize for my my tardiness and bum rushing the show and kicking Scott off.
For anybody that doesn't know, Donovan drove from Toronto to be here in studio, and if you can't tell, the audio of a person in studio is about 1,000 times better than someone on the phone, so I really appreciate him being in the studio.
It is, and the dynamic is also better, right? Which is why if I could come out, I wanted to, because, being on the radio with Tim and Sid, there's always that awkward, is he going to talk? Am I going to talk? The pause, delay.
Yeah.
So I love that you guys are doing this. It's a really important platform. So if I could come out and help, I would love to.
I appreciate it. If you actually look into the camera there, we have it set up. We're trying to do the Tim and Sid style pod. If you want to slide over here, that way we can actually get you in and get you the video credit for being a part of the show.
The looks of the show just went down a little bit when I moved over.
You're the most stylish guy in all of Western Ontario media.
I don't know about that.
You were tweeting last night about lapel pins.
That's true. I was. There's some guys at our places who have better style, I think, than me. Sean McKenzie's got great style.
Okay.
Justin Dunk's got good style.
Who's on your Mount Rushmore aside from Dunk and McKenzie of stylish reporter / media?
In the entire industry?
Yeah, we'll say it doesn't have to be inside the Sportsnet building. People that you've seen around at events.
I got to draft Nabil, probably number one.
Yep.
He's on the other guy's team, but I respect what he's doing.
Yep.
My buddy Cabral, much more casual, but still is able to kind of pull off a casual, refined look. Uncle Timmy is up there. McAuliffe is on the Mount Rushmore. He's got some great sweaters in his repertoire. Nice thick Windsor knot. I think those are going to be my three guys: my gold, my silver, and my bronze.
I'll also throw Mark Masters' hair in there.
Okay, yeah.
It stands straight up, and I'm a big fan of that. He could easily play any '80s pop band if he wanted. Just yell that thing straight up.
That's a great call.
We got to have you in on the show more often if we can, because I'd love to have you on. I know it's a bit of a trek, but today we wanted to have you on because you and I were talking earlier this week about the OUA uniform situation that's going on right now. We both had a couple of opinions, and I had a lot of fun talking with you in 3 tweets, and that's why I was like, there's no point in getting in this on Twitter, so let's talk. So I have you in studio now. For those that aren't familiar, 3 uniforms to be used on game day, 2 helmets, kind of not ruled by the OUA, but voted on, administered by the athletic directors as part of an OUA proposal mandate. It's part of a larger idea of football reform in the OUA as well. Give me your opening thoughts.
Well, one, I think I've taken on this mantra of the jersey guy. I've written about jerseys. I like jerseys and the aesthetic and the look. So people think that it's this divisive issue and I'm on one side of it,
right, and
the coaches who voted are on the other side. It's not. Ultimately, I think my stance is more so, what do you want to get out of any legislation that you put in place,
right?
And what's the goal, and is this a means to an end to meet that goal? I love what the OUA is doing because they're having a conversation about what we can do. So first and foremost, I back that people are talking, and I support whatever they decide. I just think that smart people can differ on how we get to the same place. So in respects to 1/3 of this rule, which was, or I guess 2/3, because it was jerseys is one part, helmets is another, and then there's the roster size.
Yep.
So let's tackle jerseys and helmets. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
To me, if you say what's the point of this rule? Is it for parity? Okay, fine. Parity is a nice thing that everyone tries to reach.
Right.
I don't think that limiting, Guelph, because really we're talking about Guelph.
Yeah, it was, for those that don't know, again, it was Guelph, Carleton, and Western were the ones that voted against the jersey uniform rule, I believe, from the Guelph Mercury story I saw.
Yes.
Western is an interesting one to me because they really only have the two helmets. Their secondary purple one is amazing, by the way, with the white crest on.
Yeah,
I think that's a great look. But and Carleton has, I believe, 4 uniforms, so they were restricted, so they had to ditch one of theirs, which is why they're involved. But there was only 3 schools that voted against it anyways.
But it's an interesting point because of the helmets rule, which is separate. Carleton voted in favor for only having 2 helmets because they only have 2 helmets. Right, so everyone's voting in their own self-interest, other than, I'm proud to say, even though I'm in enemy territory right now, my alma mater. I was actually really proud of them for saying, I'm going to vote what's best, in our opinion, for the conference, not our self-interest. And I think this is what this is about. I think people are tired of recruiting against Guelph, given all their new toys, some of them being uniforms, some of them being facilities. And they're saying, this is a way that we can knock down our competitor, which is what recruiting is about. You say to a kid, you're not going to play there because of X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. Exactly, right? You're knocking down your opponents. Some people recruit that way anyways. This is not about parity. Marshall Ferguson, coming out of Kingston as a high schooler, you had your top 3. What were your top 3?
I was down to U of T because I thought I could start right away, which seemed badass to me coming out of high school. McMaster and Laurier, just because I thought Coach Jeffries was the man. Right.
Okay. Did the uniforms have anything to do with your decision?
Nothing.
That's you as a guy.
I know, and it's so individualistic, right?
Right.
That's the whole conversation.
There's some offensive linemen who are going to be turned off about 8 uniforms and not going to choose to go there, right? It's so you're building a program and a culture to fit different needs for different people. Guelph's a great option for some people. Queens is a great option with 1 uniform.
Yeah.
Are we going to tell Queens how many uniforms they should have? I think once we get into legislating what people do and how they run their program, I just don't think it's smart. Specifically because I don't think it achieves the goal that we're looking for, which is parity. I don't think if Guelph can no longer give you 8 uniforms, they could just have 3 nice ones. Some kids like, you know what? I was going to go to whatever the school that struggled, York, Waterloo. I was going to go to Guelph, but now they only have 3 uniforms. I'm going to go to York or Waterloo now. I don't think that's realistic.
No, yeah, and I'm glad to hear you say that as well, because you mentioned on Twitter about having a salary cap style of jersey capping, right? Because that's basically what we're talking about, is limiting the ability of a school to assert their own individual influence on the type of athlete that they would like to recruit, and does it help or hurt the bottom line of the OUA, the football product, and where kids decide to go when they're coming out of high school. Because, like you're saying, a lot of this is driven at kids that don't really know what they want when they're coming out of high school, and they see something flashy and they might like it. But you're right about the idea of, if you're going to start over-legislating like that, it's almost like the NFL domestic abuse cases where we said, if you're going to rule before due process, right, then what can possibly come down the line? Everybody has the Pandora's box conversation about opening up. I will say, in my opinion, the OUA, again, for the people that don't understand, they didn't hand this down and say, here's the new rule, we're knocking it down, right? Yep. The athletic directors voted on it. And I'm great to hear you say that it is an open conversation as well, because I have my own biases. I happen to play at MAC for 5 years. That's natural. That's kind of bred into me by now. But in no way am I bashing Guelph. Am I bashing anybody in trying to present my opinion that I don't think this is a bad thing, and I don't know why people have taken such a big issue with it. But the reason it's become an issue, and the reason people think that as soon as you say, oh, I don't like the idea of Guelph having all these jerseys and being able to throw the money at different aspects that other schools might not have through the wealth of Stu Lang, then people think that you're just smashing them for who they are. No, you're smashing the idea of trying to create a better OUA.
Right. Well, there's some great points there, and let me give you an example. Mike Carney, who went there from BC, quarterbacks, now he's playing on the defensive side of the ball. Good athlete, good player. He sees the jerseys. He says, wow, I didn't know much about that program. Let me look into it. The next Mike Carney, the kid we're trying to get from BC,
right,
maybe he says, well, there's not much difference in the styles and the cultures of the schools in the OUA. I'm going to go to Saskatchewan, where Mr. Dubé is giving them sometimes more uniforms than Guelph. I think, and I had a great conversation with Peter Baxter about this at the Laurier Social on Friday. The issue, and I'll give you the devil's advocate, because he's looking at it from an AD's perspective,
right,
where he's got a young, aggressive head coach who's coming to him and say, I got to compete against these teams. I need another helmet. I need another jersey. And he's saying, no. So it's putting strains on programs that are not realistic for everyone. Not everyone's going to be able to pay, $300 just for a sweater in a jersey, times that by 90 guys now, because that's the new rule, times that by 8 uniforms, times that by how many rips, so on and so forth. Not everyone can fiscally do that. And the other coaches make the argument that it's not smart in the business model, based on how much money these programs have, to do that. My argument is, that's a Guelph issue. If you think they're wasting their money, let them waste their money. That's an advantage for you now. But I think once we start legislating how people are using their assets on their programs, it becomes a murky waters. Our Western gets cleats and gloves from Under Armour. So we say, well, that's a competitive advantage.
Yeah, we were the same here with Nike, and people used to question us about that and say, man, Nike, you guys have the best stuff coming out. You always have new hoodies every year and stuff. We're like, yeah, we pay into a player's package, but we're given discounts based on our connection with T. Litson and some of the different places around that are suppliers, right? And like you're saying, that becomes the question that, well, if you guys have Nike and Under Armour, and like a couple of years ago, Guelph was with Russell, right? Yeah. And everybody looked at it as like, yeah, you guys have a bunch of jerseys, but you're with Russell. That's a joke brand. That's nothing.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, I'm not sure if they still are with Russell, but they have...
Adidas now.
They are Adidas now, yes. So they've kind of, I guess you could say, moved up a little bit in terms of branding perspective, but just the idea that perhaps they've been able to create their own kind of aura around their program through this flash and dance, and the sizzle hasn't necessarily come, again, similar to the way that Oregon hasn't won a national championship, and they've been the school that's been the poster boy for all of their uniforms in the States.
Yeah, that's the other thing where I think we're kind of knee-jerk reaction, the parity. I don't know, I'm sorry, wake me up when Guelph has won a Yates Cup.
Yeah. Like what has it got them to this point?
Right. And I listen, they're a great program. They've been one of the best in the last 3 years. I'm not knocking. I'm just saying we're overreacting to something that's not an issue.
Yes.
The parity in OUA football is, I would argue, better than any other conference, and arguably better than any other sport. Where's the parity in OUA basketball right now? Men's or women's?
Yeah, you've got 4 top teams, and aside from that.
Right. So we're not making legislation as far as what Carleton is doing. Why are we making legislation as far as what Guelph's doing when they haven't even got over the hump yet? It's not even an issue yet.
The depth and the bench of Carleton over the last couple of years, if you were to look at that and say, you know what, we're going to limit your bench to a certain number, and then that's going to hurt a team like Carleton more than it's going to hurt Ottawa, because Johnny B is going to drop in 30 points on you anyway. So it really doesn't matter, right? That's
exactly
the conversation.
I mean, I think there's 5 teams in the last decade in the OUA that won the Yates Cup. To me, that's a lot of parity.
Yep.
In the Q, it's 2 teams, and one is just this year. In the Can West, it's probably about 3. The AUS, there's 4 teams, so it's a bit of a crapshoot. But I think we're overreacting when there's other things that we should really be looking at to help parity. I mean, the rules as far as Carleton and how they raise money and how it's in many ways divorced from the institution, the school, are totally different than the realities at a school like York. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but I'm saying if we're looking at inequities, those are real inequities. What we should be doing is saying, who's doing things well? How can we replicate that across the country? Queens has a book program, so some of the older players, they give their books to the younger guys, so you're not buying them from the bookstore.
Right.
That's helping as far as the cost of a student athlete. That makes sense. Let's take that model, bring it across the country. Western was feeding their guys every day, after practice and before film. Instead of saying that's not fair, let's say, how are you doing that? How are you outsourcing that food? How are you getting it at a good cost because you're buying it in bulk? Let's see if we can replicate that at other schools to help those other programs who are struggling. Instead of saying, well, it's not fair, we can't compete, so you do less.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when we're legislating from the top, I think we're losing players to the NCAA. We're losing players to other conferences. And Ontario already loses more players to the NCAA to other conferences than any other province.
We just talked about over the weekend, Justin Dunk was down in Indianapolis covering some of the best and brightest in the coming through the NCAA ranks. There was Brett Boyko, Brandon Bridge, quarterback from South Alabama, Tyler Varga, who played a season at Western as a running back. Maybe a bit of a connection to you in terms of the purple running back situation there, but he left after a year, went down to Yale, all these spots. Can you imagine if Varga stayed, played 5 years here? Aside from education, obviously Yale played a bit of a role with him there, but Brandon Bridge coming out, went to Alcorn State, made his way to South Alabama. Imagine if he had gone to, say, Laurier, and he had Coach Falls with him now, and they worked together for 4 years. If you had a guy like Brett Boyko who stayed in and was compared to Matt Sewell over the last 5 years, what kind of conversation that creates? If you have Covington from Rice, if he's here and it's guys like Von Martin, you start to continue a tradition of defensive linemen at a specific school. And all. I think you're so right about taking the best of each school and communicating to each other to create the best possible conference and sport. And at that point, you'll be able to compare yourself to any, I don't care if it's NCAA, regardless of money, the revenue you bring in. We're not going to have 80,000 fans coming to a game at Loud People Stadium, right? That's not who we are. That's not what we do. But if you're able to take the best of every situation and create the best possible conference, country, and CIS, at that point, you're probably back on TV. You probably have more interest. And once you get TV back, you never know what's going to happen. I just think there's so much development that can come from this situation where there's really been a ton of negative energy just put on by, oh, well, they can't have their uniforms. The OUA sucks, and throwing heat at everyone, right?
Right, exactly. I think, and we're trying to get to the same place. There's just different ideals of how to get there. And so I think, if Guelph, let's say, is hoarding all the great athletes and recruiting, people are saying this is not fair. How do we catch up? I look at it the other way. If great athletes are staying in the CIS, staying in the OUA, going to Guelph, there's going to be a trickle-down effect where a high school teammate of a guy who has a great experience at Guelph says, you know what, I don't have to go to the NCAA. I can stay in the CIS. And maybe Guelph might not be for him, but maybe he goes to a Laurier or to a Windsor. Yeah. And then the level of everyone kind of rises. Like the tide rises all boats. So the level in the games is better. Scouts are taking the game more seriously at a CFL level and for some guys at an NFL level. I think we could be looking at how do we get the best players playing in the country no matter where, and then that's going to benefit everyone in the long run. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Amanda, you want to throw anything in?
I was just saying, I like how you said it's the Guelph thing, because even when you're looking from the outside of the OUA, you're like, why isn't soccer getting as much money as football? Well, that's like a MAC thing.
That's decided by the schools, not by the conference.
Exactly, it's decided by the schools, and it's going to that point to understand what the OUA structure is and understand what each individual school is before you make that critic point.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. You look at Windsor, they attribute a lot of their resources towards their women's basketball, their men's basketball, and their track and field. That's a school decision, and I'm sure, the football program was like, I'd love to have the same budget that a Western has, but on every campus, those decisions are made, by people hired who make more money or smarter than me, and which right for their school, their country, their culture, their alumni base. I think it's just tricky where you say to Guelph, you know what you're doing is not feasible for others, so you're not allowed to do it. Specifically because, if we're being honest, what's happening at Guelph right now is an anomaly. Yep. Not just for the conference or the country. For Guelph, when Stu Lang eventually retires, whether or not they're able to keep up that standard, we'll have to see. He'll certainly leave a legacy as far as facilities and a standard with which the program's operated, but whether or not they have 11 jersey options after he leaves, that's up to them to decide. So I don't think we should legislate because of a anomaly at one school.
We are up against it a little bit here. I'm already I'm a couple of minutes over, but I wanted to make sure we try and get as much in with you as we can because I really do appreciate you coming in and sharing your insight.
That's my fault. I'm long-winded.
No, you're good. No, I like the long wind. It gives a bit of a story. Thank you for coming in, Donnovan.
My pleasure.
Hope to have you back soon.